Right, everybody, welcome to the Resilient Businessmen podcast, episode number 4. Today, I'm joined by Sanderson, who has stumbled across me by accident, I think, by joining my Resilient Businessmen group. And today he's going to share his story, 2 stories about building a business in the last recession, 2008, which is probably going to be super helpful for any guys, ladies who are building a business right now with the recession coming up that we're about to embrace. And he's also going to go through his journey through fat loss. Was it 5 stone you lost, Sandy?
Around about 5 stone. Could be a lot. Could be a stone or 2 more than that, because I got to a point where I didn't want to weigh myself because I knew that I was in a place that I didn't want to be.
Yeah.
So from where I know, 5 stone.
Awesome. So he's going to talk through that as well. We're going to start this episode just before his military days, where you were struggling with your weight as a child. Okay, so let's start from there, Sandy.
Hello, I'm Sandy. I'm 55 now, 56 next week, and pretty much all through my formative years, I struggled with weight. I wasn't, never been absolutely massive, but I've always, had to struggle and work hard to, to control weight. I think as a child, that is, harder to do because of the temptations that are there, and you always want to eat the wrong things. And I always wondered why, all my friends could eat chocolate and sweets and not put any weight on, and I was putting weight on. So yeah, from an early age, I was sort of struggling with weight.
Can you describe what your eating habits were like as a kid, and then how they changed, I guess, in the military and then moved forward?
Yeah, as a kid, it was I had a mum and dad that always didn't matter. They didn't have a lot. We lived in a council house up in Leicester. Didn't have an awful lot. I can't remember. I don't think we ever went away on holidays. My mum and dad didn't have a car, but there was always food on the table. And it was the good old home cooked. Home cooked food. My mum was an amazing cook, and it showed. There was always puddings, galore, and and everything that you. Well, actually, is it everything that you shouldn't eat? Actually, sort of in my journey now, sort of nothing wrong with it. Very little processed food. But it was, difficult.
So after every main meal, you would finish with a dessert. Is that how you would?
Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
And it still affects me today. I'm always, when I'm finishing a main meal, I'll be thinking, what can I have for dessert?
Yeah.
It's just how I've been brought up.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, like, what was your activity levels like as a kid? Were you out in the streets much? Like, what were you doing?
Yeah, I think back then, going through the 70s, there were no computer games, there were no mobile phones, so it was literally you were out all day. Either on your bike or running around or climbing trees. So, activity wise, I was always active as a kid. I was always doing something. But then I suppose, I was, that temptation was always there at the end of the day. There was always good food on the, on the table. And so it went on. I was never huge as a kid, but I compared to my peers at the time, I was always carrying more weight than them.
Right, yeah. And then as you entered the army, so what age were you when you joined?
I was 17 when I went in.
17.
Yeah. Did my basic training and went out to Germany, spent 5 years in Germany, drinking lots of beer, eating lots of bratwurst and frikadellas and chips and, but then it was probably easier because you were so, sort of physically active. and I made myself physically active as well, because I was training a lot. I knew I wanted to go to the commando regiment, and so I was doing a lot of my own physical training as well as a physical job. So that was relatively easy. And being young, as well, I found at the time that it was really easier to manage, sort of manage weight and weight loss.
For context, can you give us some insight to what a typical active day would be in the army for you back then? Like, how hard was it? What were you doing, etc.?
Well, it was quite strange, because the army then realised that blokes would keep themselves fit. Now they've got state-of-the-art gyms and and everything else, and then we didn't do PT every day, because most blokes would go out after work and do their own PT. Whether that be a run, go to the gym. For me, I remember we used to, most Fridays we used to do either an 8 or a 10-mile loaded, loaded march, and I'd get back from that feeling I hadn't really exerted myself, and I'd go out for a 5 or 6 mile run. Wow. At the end of that. Now, to get to that point, to do that, I was putting a lot of sort of hard work in. So that was by no means natural, fitness. I was doing a lot of running at the time. I ran regimental cross country, but to get to that standard where I was running regimental cross country, again, that was an awful lot of work in. There were people that I was running with that wouldn't do anything, and they would be like whippets. But I had to really, really work hard at my running and sort of physical effort to be able to maintain that maintain that standard, all the while with the food in the in the background, and having to watch what I ate and and everything else.
So you were in peak condition back then?
I was yeah, there's no no two ways of looking at it. I probably was. Yeah.
What would you say is some of the life lessons you learned from being in the army?
For me, it was absolutely fantastic, because the demographic was huge. People that were joining the army on the verge of going to prison, been on the wrong side of the law, to people that had come from university. And had a very, a brilliant upbringing. And you learned something from everybody. Probably didn't realise it at the time, but looking back, you took things away from from everybody and everybody's outlook, on life, and sort of people's views. Political views, social views, life views, and it was quite a liberating, quite a liberating place to be. But it makes you resilient, as well. Some of the things that you do, you realise that nobody's going to drag you through it. You have to get yourself through it. There's people all around you, but you've got to put the work in to to get the reward sort of out of it. Nobody is going to make you do it, and that was one of the big lessons that probably I've taken through life. I listen to myself, I'll listen to other people, but I won't necessarily do what other people say. I know that it's me that's interested in me, nobody else really.
My grandfather was in the army as well, and 3 characteristics that really stand out for me with him is like hard work and disciplined, and just no matter what situation, he's resilient and he just finds an answer. And I'm very inspired by him. He's a great man. So I'm sure you can relate to that as well. Absolutely. And that's it. And it doesn't matter what, I always remember my dad, my dad was in the, was in the Navy, not when I was, when I was born,
But he always said to me, the people that join the services never change, as in, sort of the mentality that makes somebody want to join the services, but the uniform changes. And I think that's, that's so true, that whoever you meet, whether it's a young soldier now or whether it's an old soldier from World War II, that mindset is completely the same. And when you listen to, well, we're coming up to the 40th anniversary of the Falklands, exactly the same for for that era. I was just too young to go down there at the time, but exactly the same for that era. It's just that resilience. They were all there, they were doing a job, they were all concerned about their own safety and their own well-being. However, they were there for the greater good. So if looking after the mates as well, and it is that resilience again.
So talk to me through the transition. So why did you want to leave eventually, and then what happened after that?
Had to. I mean, the standard career is 22 years, so that goes from your 18th birthday, and then you pretty much leave it on your 40th birthday. And I'd always made the choice, because I'd spent so long, joining at 17, never really worked in Civvy Street, that I didn't want to stay on. Wanted to do 22 years and leave, so I could see what civilian life was all about, and I'm really glad that I did, because I look back favourably at my career, the good times and the and the bad times, but I don't miss it. So I think from a transition point of view, I had a really good transition, and I remember talking to my then wife as we drove out of camp for the last time, and I opened the driver's window of the car and just banged my head, and she went, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Getting rid of all the crap from the last 22 years." And I wanted to keep things like the timekeeping, the resilience, professionalism, and everything else, all those the good traits, and get rid of all the as I call it, all the niff naff and trivia. And I still keep in touch with mates that I was in with. Just been to the Army Navy rugby match at Twickenham, and I love those days out, but I love what I do now. I love civilian life, met some fantastic people that have never served. That I think I had a really easy transition, and some people don't.
I know it's quite common to hear people go homeless from the forces, isn't it? Because why do you think that is? Why do you think people struggle, in your opinion?
I think there's an awful lot of people that love the army or the forces become a comfort blanket. And contrary to popular belief, you don't get everything done for you in the forces, but when you come out, you're having to deal with things that you wouldn't necessarily be exposed to in the forces. And when that comfort blanket's taken away, it becomes a bit overwhelming. And then those sort of people can go in a downward spiral, haven't necessarily got that that resilience, and then think that the world's against them. They might not be able to get a job, they might not be able to hold down a home life. I mean, my last 5 or 6 years in the military, I was hardly at home. So I had a little daughter, she's at uni now, and I was coming back from operational tour, and she wouldn't even come to me because she didn't know, sort of who I was, which was really, really hard. And I think that when you're, when you're living with somebody in the army and you're away all the time, you have your space, they have their space. But when you're living together all the time, all of a sudden, when you're out of the army, that becomes very, very difficult. So I think there's a whole multitude of reasons, but I think the big one is that the forces become a comfort blanket, and blokes then, as soon as that comfort blanket's whipped away, they go into a downward spiral. And I think homelessness as well is, there's a lot of issues around homelessness. In terms of some people, it becomes not the norm. That's probably the wrong way to look at it, but they can't adjust into that civilian life, and can't I don't know, maintain a home life. And the easiest thing to do is just to get out, perhaps haven't got anywhere to go, and end up either sofa surfing or sort of on the street. But it's really sad, as well.
I can imagine the transition is hard for most, because like you can become lost, maybe like it's been your identity for decades of your life, and then you're like, who am I going to be now?
Yeah, absolutely. That 22 years absolutely flies by. In that first year, you think, oh God, 22 years. If I do 22 years, I've got 22 years. It's a lifetime away.
Wow.
And then the next thing, it's knocking on the door. And you're out, and that's it. And again, that's where I think the military is getting better at managing people that are leaving, but it's pretty much you do your pre-release courses, and then you're gone. And it's no big fanfares and bands playing. It's just, right, hand your ID card in, that's it, you're gone. And I think that's difficult to for some to deal with as well. And it is, you cut off.
You can build it up on a pedestal, like, oh, this is it, it's going to be over, and then it's over, nothing. You've got to continue your life. So I'm guessing that from what I've heard, we're going to say, like, everybody can struggle to find a job when they leave. So talk me through what you chose to do. Did you have a job before your business, or what?
I didn't have a clue what I was going to do, what I wanted to do, and I just tried to make myself employable. So I did all, sort of health and safety courses, and first aid courses, and and all sorts of just little courses that I thought would benefit me. And there was actually a guy that I knew that was leaving same time as me, and he just said, stay in security. He said, it's what we've always done. He said, it's a bit different on the outside. He said, but the principles are still the same. And I did some courses surrounding security, and that's what I went into. I went into security consultancy for a couple of years, working for a business, and they employed me because I was quite close to London, and I ended up working on the government estate. So for the Home Office, the Downing Street. So it was, in terms of the places that I ended up visiting and working, it was fantastic. And I was 40 years old, and I came out and I thought, all right, I haven't got to run around anymore, and I haven't got to do it. So I was just doing all the things that it was fast food every day. I was drinking, every night when I got home, and just sat in front of the TV, and then get on the train the next day and go back. And it actually probably became one of the most unhealthy periods of my life.
Wow. So you've went from the regimented lifestyle, training your ass off, resilient, dedicated in the army, to then transition into civilian life, getting a job, going through the motions, and then just turn it to food and booze.
Yeah. But but all the while I was doing that, I also realised that I shouldn't be doing it, but I loved it. I'd stay up in London on, some blokes would go, oh, are you coming out? And, and I'd stay up in London and, go out and sleep on somebody's sofa, and then get up and go to work the next day. But I knew in the back of my mind that, it was not sustainable for the long term.
Just a phase you had to go through as you transitioned, which I'm sure everyone would be the same, to be fair. Freedom. So then talk to me about when you launched your business.
That was at the end of that. I worked for the security consultancy for 2 years, and it had always been in the back of my mind that I wanted to work for myself. I don't know why. It was just one of those things. And the opportunity came, and I thought I was doing some ridiculous hours, for them. I thought, right, I'm going to go on my own, and I did. So I left the job, and didn't really have any money behind me. So I knew it was going to be, hard, and I just set myself up as a training and consultancy provider. And it was hard. I was just constantly phoning around, cold calling, all the things that I hate. I still hate cold calling, but I got a couple of bits of work, and then it got a bit of traction, and I got more work, and I'm here now. Now my business is me. I use some freelance trainers when I need to. I've had my fingers burnt a couple of times taking people, taking people on. But I wanted to have a good work-life balance. So I don't, I'm not a slave to the dollar, and I'm not chasing the dollar. I do what I need to do to have a comfortable life. And I like that I like that being able to do what I want to do in life, and not a slave to the business. But that 2008, that was hard in the recession, but it wasn't unmanageable. I found through the recession, through that recession, and through the pandemic as well, there's a lot of pressure put on people by the media, because they come out with, this is going to happen and that's going to happen, and I just really, looking back, ignored all that, and just did what I wanted to do, what I knew was the right thing to do, if that makes some semblance of sense, and came out the other end of it. Fast forward into the pandemic, one of the best things that I've done, and I've never gone back, is watching mainstream media. Don't watch any mainstream news at all. I don't buy any newspapers. I still get my news off YouTube and Google. YouTube predominantly. Follow a couple of channels on there. But don't watch any mainstream news, and it is by far the best thing that I've ever done.
Absolutely. It's
clarity of mind, and it's so liberating. It is unbelievable.
It's like the pandemic doesn't exist, isn't it? Like, because I'm the same. I've got all news, all papers, and I'm like, without the news, you wouldn't know what was going on. It's pretty eye-opening, to be honest.
It's absolutely amazing, and I thought that I would really struggle, because I was a current affairs. I'd get up in the morning, first thing that would go on, Sky News. Go to work, Sky News on in the corner of the computer, and I haven't missed it one bit, at all.
It's just scaremongering, isn't it?
Yeah. And I think that's, going back to the point about the first recession, and going back to the point about the pandemic, I just did my own thing throughout the pandemic as well. And that was, I'm telling you off air, Chris, I didn't have any work for 3 months. But I also wasn't spending for 3 months, because we were stuck at home, and I was working behind the scenes. I was still sending emails out, letting everybody know I was still alive, and slowly but surely work came back online, and it was face to face, which a lot of businesses still don't want. But I found that the business I was working for were businesses that had worked all through the pandemic anyway, so weren't bothered about whether it was face to face or not. So actually, the reality from what we were, or the reality of what the media was portraying the pandemic to be, and actually what was happening on the ground, were two completely different things. And I think that I know an awful lot of people that were hanging off every word that the BBC and Sky and ITV and Channel 4 were saying, and were incredibly scared. And it's difficult when you try and sell people, I don't watch mainstream media. If that's what you believe, that's what that's what you believe. But I found it really liberating, and I won't go back to it either.
No, me either. So what I think will be super valuable for people tuning in and myself, because I've just started my own new company this year. Like, what would your advice be for somebody who's just started out? Because you started in a recession, tough times, and you managed to just keep resilient and push through. Like, talk me through the start of it, and then what year, how long did it take before it started to take off, etc. That makes sense.
I'd say probably a good year before I started getting, from when I started the business to having regular work, come in. I'd have really good spells, and then it'd tailor off a little bit. But it was probably about a year, and then I started to get some, sort of some really good work, regular work starting to come in. And like I said to you off air, Chris, the thing for me is worrying about the things that you have control of.
Very valuable. Yeah.
If it's out of your control, don't worry about it. It's pointless worrying about it, and you end up, getting stressed about it and sending yourself to, a bit morbid, but to an early grave. And that's why I didn't want to. From a business point of view, I didn't want to be a slave to the dollar, where I was chasing absolutely everything, and all I was thinking about was work. And one of the things I remember watching years ago was they did an interview with the Dalai Lama. Now, I'm not a spiritualist. I'm not a religious person in any way, shape, or form. But they were interviewing the Dalai Lama. And they said to him, or the interviewer said to the Dalai Lama, what surprises you most about mankind? And he sits there and he looks around the room, and then he comes out and he says, man. And the interviewer says, man. He said, can you explain? And he said, yeah. And he said, man spends all his time working, all hours, doesn't take any time for himself or any time for his family. He wants to earn as much money as he can, but then he gets to the point where he becomes so ill that he has to spend all the money that he's earned to get his health back. And that really stuck with me. It really resonated, and I've never, ever, forgotten that. And everybody talks about that work-life, the work-life balance, but very few people actually realize, the work-life balance. And that's what I wanted to, and still try and, and do now. It doesn't always work. Sometimes I'm flat out, but I always want to do the things, so me and my mate go to the British Grand Prix every year. I'm going to the Isle of Wight Festival in a couple of weeks. And so there's points in the calendar that, that I want for myself and, for my family. And that's what's kept me going, really.
Yeah, it's a common struggle for the guys that I coach, to be honest, that they put themselves on the back burner, just like layer after layer of responsibilities in front of them. And then they neglect their physical and mental health. They end up in a bit of a mess. And it's exactly what you've just said, basically.
Yeah, it is. It's and again, it's been quite a revelation, as well. And it's so again, I've used the word 3 times now. It's quite liberating. Because I'm not constantly at my desk from 7 o'clock in the morning, and then sat at home for another 4 hours doing emails at night. When I'm at work, I'm at work. When I'm at home, I'm at home. Sometimes I have to do work at home, but I try to keep that to a minimum.
So you're present with your family at home. Yeah. Most men struggle with that. They're just constantly scrolling or still doing emails and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I get that that's not sustainable. Whatever you do has got to be sustainable, and that isn't sustainable, because there comes a point where you're going to be burnt out. Where you're going to be forced to take downtime, and that being forced to take downtime is probably where you end up either having a breakdown, or being admitted to hospital, or being diagnosed with, some medical condition, be it ulcers or whatever the case may be. So at some stage, that burning the candle at both ends is going to take its toll. No question about that.
And so how long have you had your business now?
I started in 2008 and I went incorporated in 2010. So as an incorporated business, 12 years, 14 from the outset.
So the reason I asked that is the statistics for businesses lasting are like really, really poor.
Yeah.
Especially first year, second year, third year. I think after the 10-year, most just like fold. So you've been going 12, 14 years. So that's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
What would you say is the key to longevity in business?
Again, for me, I was thinking about this before the podcast today, and I think for me, it's actually going back to what I said about worrying about the things that you've got control of. For me, I hate the thought of having either HMRC or the VAT man, sort of knocking on the door. So I always make sure that my responsibilities towards, sort of tax and VAT and all those sort of things are covered. Everything else is manageable. All the other business things are manageable, but I always make sure that in the accounts, they're the things that are, that are covered. That's what I've got. That's what I have control of. So that's, and that's really for my peace of mind. Sort of more than anything else. And if I keep that, side of the business good, then the knock-on effect is I can sleep soundly at night. I'm not waking up in the middle of the night worrying how I'm going to pay VAT or how I'm going to pay the tax man, or whatever the case may be. And it hasn't always been easy. Don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of putting myself up there and saying I'm this this businessman that has never had any worries. Of course I do. You're not in business you're never in a business if you don't have worries along the way. But I try and keep those worries to an absolute minimum, and that's might sound simple, but to me, I can't put my finger on anything else and saying that's what's kept me going.
I've been recently reading a book called Letting Go, and it's pretty much what you're talking about here. Like, we worry about things in the future. Our body doesn't know the difference between the present and the future. So you're living that experience without it even happening. Yeah. And then obviously depression, thinking about the past, like having the ability to let go and just live in the moment and not worry about things is a superpower. And that's probably why you're feeling so good in yourself, business is going well, etc.
Yeah, it's, to me, it's really, really simple.
Yeah.
I'm not I'll never be on Dragon's Den. Do I want to be on Dragon's Den? No. Is the short answer to that. But I think what's really simple to me is probably not simple to a lot of people, and that's one of the reasons why I jumped at the chance of doing the podcast to you or with you. Just really to, I'm a normal guy, with a business, been through some tough times business wise and, life wise, but come out the other end. And if it helps somebody else or gives somebody a little bit of inspiration, then, it's worked.
Absolutely. That's the reason why I've started it, just for normal people to share their resilient journeys, because we can relate to people who are the same as us, not these bloody celebrities and stuff. Do you know what I mean? So, So we've talked a lot about business. Let's transition now to your health and fitness journey, because I can see the passion behind it. Talk to me about the situation you were in, and then what was the penny drop moment that, right, I need to freaking change it here, and then what you did moving forward.
It was. I do a lot of work I did a lot of work overseas, and I was still from my early 40s, I got to that point where I thought, this isn't sustainable in terms of drinking every night. And then I started, sort of getting back on the fitness journey. I was out on my bike, and I was back in a place that that I was happy, and I was eating a healthy diet. I've never been really unhealthy. I've had an unhealthy, I think everybody does, but I've never, I've always looked at, so if we bought pasta, it was always brown pasta and brown rice and brown bread and low fat spread and, et cetera, et cetera. So I was on that, I was on that journey. And then fast forward to three years ago, 2019, I was flying out for work, and I saw a program on the in-flight entertainment, and it was called The Magic Pill. And I thought, what's this about? And as soon as I started watching it, I was engrossed. And the first thing that the filmmaker said, why are human beings the only animal species that can't regulate the weight? And I thought, wow, that's powerful in itself. You never see a fat lion or a fat tiger or a fat giraffe, because in evolutionary terms they're eating what they're supposed to be eating. So that I had that in the back of my mind all the way through the film. And then they were talking about the only way animals get fat is if they have human interaction. And that is normally, if you want to make a cow fat, ready for slaughter, you feed it grain. Right. And then the other question they said is, why is grain for human beings deemed as being heart healthy and healthy, but we use it to fatten animals? And that was another thing that sort of really resonated. Anyway, I watched the Magic Pill, and it advocated a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet. But it was the type of fat that was important. It was not processed fat, not seed oils. So it was very butter, lard, ghee, dripping, animal fat. So the fattier cuts of meat. And I thought there's got to be something in it with the people that they were interviewing in the in the program. And got back from overseas, and I thought, right, I'm gonna try it. So me and my partner both started it together, and unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. In days, it started making a difference, not just in weight loss, but in the way that I felt. My sleep got better, skin got better. Clarity of mind got better. Didn't have that sort of brain fog.
Can you give us context, like describe a day in the life, your diet before you started this, and then what it looked like when you started it?
Yeah, I was before I started it, I was training. So I still am training, but I go to the gym in the morning, and I get home and I'd have probably a 4 or 5 egg omelette with loads of broccoli. I put chicken on there, and it was a plateful, of food. And then I was, I'd have the lunch would probably be some brown pasta with sort of chicken and salad, and then at night would be sort of meat and vegetables and maybe a bit of rice, for carb, at night. So, as I say, it wasn't an unhealthy.
So for the average person, that is very, very, very clean eating. So
yeah.
So that's interesting. Seeing you've lived like that to then jump into a high-fat diet and you're feeling the benefits. So I'm interested in what you say. Yeah.
What happens? Ketosis is a natural body phenomena, for want of a better expression. So there are 2 energy sources that the body has: sugar or carbohydrate, and fat. So if you deplete carbohydrate, your body switches over to fat because it needs to get energy from somewhere. Yeah. So your body can only store 2,000 calories worth of carbohydrate. Over 2,000 calories, it stores it as fat. But at any one time, if you're using fat for energy, you've got 100,000 calories worth of on tap energy. So in really basic terms, the idea of keto is you deplete your carbohydrate energy to not to zero, because so many foods contain naturally carbohydrate, but 5 to 10% of your daily diet comes from carbohydrate, whereas 75% of your daily diet comes from fat. And what that does, it suppresses insulin. So your body doesn't produce insulin, which is also a fat storage hormone. So it allows your body to use fat for energy as opposed to carbohydrate for energy. And as I said to you, sort of before this, I've used myself as a bit of a guinea pig, because you watch a lot of these diet programs and, so-called experts, and they say, oh, but your body needs carbohydrate because you crash through the floor if you don't have sugar, and, you go to hyperglycemic. Well, you don't, because the fantastic thing about the body is if you're not ill, so, if somebody's got diabetes, then, this isn't for them. But if your blood sugar is so low, your body turns protein into sugar to keep at a base level of blood sugar. So I've done an 80-hour fast was working every day, training every day, with no detriment at all in terms of level of energy, level of what I could do. And as I say, I've used myself as a guinea pig. I've got circuits tonight at the gym, I will be there with everybody else that's smashing a sort of a high carbohydrate diet. And that's what's been a bit of I did a 360-mile cycle for charity, and on no carbohydrate at all, and I didn't suffer any adverse effects of taking no carbohydrate, while most of the people all of the other people on the ride were smashing carbohydrate down the neck like it was going out of fashion, with pasta and rice and cereal bars and whatever they could get. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of information in there, but this all came out on the on the magic pill. And then there's a couple of people that I follow, Tim Noakes, who actually was an ultramarathon, he is an ultramarathon runner. He's a nutritionist and a sports scientist, but he's totally independent. And I said to you before the podcast, that it's quite a sinister place, diet and nutrition, in terms of, for me, I've done a lot of research, a lot of my own research, and the mainstream media will come out and say red meat gives you cancer. And I was reading a thing the other day, actually, and it said red meat, sort of gives you cancer. But what they don't say is who's funded the research, because a lot of funding for diet comes from the food companies. Now, if you're a scientist and you're being paid by Coca-Cola, and Coca-Cola want to, say that their, drink doesn't harm anybody, the scientist is not going to turn around after being paid millions and say, oh yeah, your drink's fine. It's red meat that's causing all the problems. And that's what I mean about the sinister, the sinister side of it. A lot of research is done by the food companies. Tim Noakes, he's totally independent. He's not part of any, sort of government, any country, South African, but he's actually got a foundation now, the Noakes Foundation, and he goes around the world advocating, sort of a high-fat, low-carbohydrate diet, because of his own journey. He's an ultramarathon runner, and he wrote a book actually called The Law of Running, LORE, The Law of Running, in which he advocated carb loading before events, and he developed diabetes, and he was at a loss. He couldn't work out why he developed diabetes, and through his own research, it came down to what I've just explained, sort of there. So now he's completely the other way, and saying high fat, low carbohydrate is the way ahead.
Can you describe what your current diet looks like from start to finish? Typical?
Well, one of the things I picked up when I found you, Chris, was the intermittent fasting. So I intermittent fast now as well. So I do an 16/8 intermittent fast. So I don't have any breakfast, and I finish eating at 8 o'clock at night. So I don't have anything from 8 o'clock at night until 12 o'clock the next day. The next day, I'll normally what I've got in the fridge at the moment is chicken. So I pre-cook. So at the weekend, I'll spend a couple of hours and just cook chicken breasts or eggs and things like that. Have that in the fridge, and I'll generally take about 100, 150, sometimes 200 grams of chicken and some egg and mayonnaise, and then so I have that at lunch, and then at night will be meat of whether that's pork, whether it's mince, whether it's a shepherd's pie without obviously the potato on there, but with celeriac mash, which is gorgeous, and vegetables. But then the vegetables will be in a cheese sauce to get the fat up, or put butter over the top of the the vegetables, and that'll pretty much be it. But what ketosis does as well, it allows leptin and ghrelin, so your satiety hormone and your hunger hormone, it brings them back into balance. So I find now I mentioned that big plate of food that I'd have for breakfast in the morning, a 5-egg omelette. I couldn't physically eat that, now. So the portion sizes come down naturally, not because it's not a calorie controlled, sort of diet. And for me now, it's not even a diet. It's a lifestyle choice. We went out with friends at the weekend, and I had burger and chips. Yeah, I'm not saying I'm this saintly person that never gets, swayed by the normal food that everybody eats. And we made our own little pact between us that if we went out with friends, I'm not going to go, oh no, I can't eat there. Oh no, I'm not eating that. I need to go to this place to eat, and it's got to be, grass-fed meat. I'm not saying that at all, because that's in my world, that's rude. If you go round to somebody's house, I'm not going to go, oh no, I can't eat that. So I eat burger and chips, and but the majority of the time I'm eating clean, and I'm eating high fat, quality high fat, sort of food. Cream, putting cream in, in coffee, butter, not low fat spread, not low fat yogurt, everything full fat milk. And I have to say that the alternatives are far tastier. A lasagna made with cheese, instead of putting pasta sheets in there, putting cheese in there is just, I love cheese anyway, but it's just heaven. Yeah. But you think, because we're led to believe that fat makes you fat.
Yeah.
And eating that amount of calories in fat, you'd be the size of a house. Well, clearly, clearly not. And it's an eye opener. It's not for everybody, but it's real eye opener for me.
Yeah. So what I teach my clients is to just find a strategy what works for them, not what works for your mate or what you've listened to, and like whatever fits your lifestyle. So this is obviously fitting your lifestyle.
It's a really emotive subject, because if you start talking to people about diet and you contradict something that they, they know or they've been told, it becomes a really emotive, really emotive subject. And that, and you just hit the nail on the head, Chris. Find something that works for, for you. And this came along and it's worked for, it's worked for me.
And a key thing that you mentioned for anybody who's maybe thinking about trying this is to not be all or nothing when you're socializing with your friends, oh, I can't do that because it's not real life. You've got to have that little bit of leeway so you can still be a human with your friends.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I follow quite a few groups on on social media, and consistently on there they put people that fall off the wagon, so they might have a weekend of of binging. Well, if you've been doing it for a month, a weekend is going to make no difference, sort of whatsoever. Even a week is not going to make a great deal of difference. And as I say, now I use the gym for strength and fitness, and I use diet for weight control, not the other way, not the other way around. And that's probably now, that's the first time in my life, so we go full circle, where I haven't struggled with diet and weight control. It just happens. Do you want me to talk about the blood, giving the blood, the platelets?
Yeah, I mean, why not? Yeah, you're passionate about it.
So I gave whole blood, and then I said, can I give platelets? So there's about 9,000 or 10,000 people in the UK that are eligible to give platelets, and they screened me and they said, yeah, you're eligible. So when I went to do the first platelet session, I had a bit of an interview with the sister there, and one of the questions was, do you eat a high-fat diet? And I said, yes. And she went, oh, well, that could be a problem, because if you eat a high-fat diet, then it sends the platelets milky, and we can't use the donation. And I said, oh, right. I said, does that mean I can't? And she said, no, we'll take the donation then and see what it's like. She said, but we may not be able to use it. So anyway, I'm there. It takes about, for anybody that doesn't know, it takes about an hour to give platelets. So I'm there, and at the end of that first donation, the nurse came up and she went, oh my God. She said, that is a fantastic donation. She said, that is exactly the color that we will want it. She said, there's no milkiness in there. And I thought, but you're saying if I, anybody that eats a high fat diet, and I'm on an ultra high fat diet, I'm eating over, 75% of my daily caloric intake is fat, but it's the type of fat. So clearly fat in terms of butter, lard, ghee, dripping is not the enemy. It's the seed oils. If you go and eat a burger, which would be deemed high in fat, not because but because of the constituent parts of it and the fat that it's made up of, a lot of it is seed oil. All the oils that we're told are healthy, that's what has a detrimental effect on on things like the platelets. And that's why why I said I've used myself as a bit of a guinea pig. And that was again was a bit of a revelation, because I was told that high fat makes turn milky, and actually I'm on a high fat diet, and it never impacted on it at all. So yeah, it's quite an the more I do it, and I'm still messing around with diet now. I still haven't got to a point where I'm absolutely happy. I'm always messing around with something, with some sort of food or fat or whatever it is. So it's a journey.
I'm interested to know what your energy levels are like, because sometimes, for example, when I break my fast around 12, I've noticed if I have, like, let's say some shredded wheat for some carbohydrates, I'll just have I'll enter like a carb coma, and I'll be just knackered for about an hour until I digest it all,
Yeah.
So obviously you don't have carbs. Is your energy levels just streamline, or?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. I've never ever felt hunger like hunger that you get on a carb-rich diet, where you are hangry. Never get that. You feel, I felt hungry before, but I've never had a painful hunger where I need to go into to a shop and and buy something. And because you're not getting that sort of that carb and blood sugar spike,
Right,
you
yeah.
never get that incredible low, after eating carbs. So my energy level is pretty constant, and I'm training. I'm 55, and I'm training. I do 3 strength sessions a week, and in between that, I'm doing circuits. So Tuesdays, Thursdays, Saturdays, and Sundays we did a bike ride. So I'm training 6 or 7 times a week, and I've always said to myself that if that feels like a chore, if I'm waking up in the morning and going, I can't be arsed, and I'm not feeling it, then I'll cut down. But I have not got to that stage yet.
Wow,
and I'm still active at home as well. So we'll take the dog for a walk, and that might be sort of 2 hours walking around the seafront.
wow.
And I've never got to that point where I need to sit down and and rest, and I'm knackered, and and everything else. And that's why I say, to me, it's a lifestyle now. It's got nothing to do with diet, weight loss, or anything else. It's a complete lifestyle change.
Yeah, I'll have a think about this. So keto lifestyle.
No, and if there's anybody, watching the podcast, I'm more than happy to, to answer any questions or to help people on their journey, because they're, and I'm helping a couple of people, sort of local to me, friends that are, that are interested in it and just starting out on the journey. And there is so much information out there about it, and not all of it is good. And again, that's where I've used myself as a bit of a guinea pig, because I've learned the hard way about what isn't the the sort of the good thing to do with it. But I just keep it as clean as I can. So drink a lot of water, and I try and eat real food.
Yeah.
There's an interesting quote: if it's food and it's been designed since 1863, steer clear of it.
Right, that was in my head actually when you were talking before. So what do you think was the point food started to change? So is that what they're suggesting there? Was it?
Well, it really, there's another really interesting fact, because if you see any pictures of town centres or city centres from about the 70s back, you'd struggle to find an overweight person in the shop. If you look at the average town centre now and going back 10, 20 years, you'd be struggling to find a dare I say normal sort of size person. Yeah. And where they said that the change was dietary guideline change, which came from America. Britain just follows America on dietary issues, dietary guidelines. And there was a scientist called Ansel Keys in America that came up with a theory that it was fat that caused heart problems, and that got real traction. And America changed their dietary guidelines and said that the bottom of the food pyramid should be carbohydrate, bread, rice, grain, and when you look at graphs when those dietary guidelines were introduced, and the prevalence then of cancer, weight gain, diabetes, they follow a linear, follow a linear path. And I so all our lives and all the lives of the listeners, we've grown up in this world where fat is the demon, and we should be eating carbohydrate. And the British dietary guidelines are exactly the same, but heavily influenced by the food industry, as well, which is a multi-billion pound beast that even governments can't compete with. Yeah, in terms of messaging.
We've had the combination of processed foods just blowing up, so cheap for anybody to feed the whole family, then transport taking over our lives. To the click of a finger, you can order a meal at your door. We're not as active as we used to, so everything's just accumulated together, and now obesity is one of the biggest epidemics in our society, isn't it? So and yet there's more diets out there than God knows what. So,
yeah, because that in itself is a multi-billion-pound industry. Anything to do with diet, and weight loss, and companies that come up with weight loss pills, and and everything else. And it's the thing that's worrying for for me is it without wanting to be sensational or sound sensationalist, it's a bigger threat to mankind than global warming ever is, because there won't be any. There's 17 million people a year die at the moment globally from diabetes.
Really?
The NHS is spending, I think it's about 5 or 6 billion out of its 120 odd billion budget on diabetes. Not the metabolic syndrome that comes with diabetes as well, but just on diabetes, which is unsustainable. And it's a dietary disease.
One thing they don't push enough is exercise. They don't push that in the mainstream as much as they should to prevent it rather than treatment. That's why I say try and get the prevention in rather than treatment.
Well, you are in the fitness industry, and I don't know whether you've seen it, but on the research that you've done, when people start to lose weight, they want to exercise. While they're big, they don't want to exercise because of all the stigma around that, or they haven't got the energy to do it, or they don't think they can do it. But what they found is that when people start that weight loss journey, they want to then exercise and go further. But it's and I think there's just so much conflicting information out there that people don't know where to start. They don't know where that journey is going to begin. Do they go on a treadmill and do hours and hours and hours of cardio? Is that the answer? No, well, I'm not a fitness professional, but I don't think it. I don't think it is. But you're absolutely right. Exercise and lifestyle rather than diet is the is the key.
Yeah, just the two things on the overload of information. Obviously, Google, type anything you want, and you'll just get an overload of information. But also in the fitness industry, fitness professionals, we're advocated to choose a certain niche or something to really knuckle down with, and then that's your selling point. So whether it be keto or freaking be a vegan, and then market towards that, and then that can be people don't know what to believe because fitness professionals are just niching down on certain things. So it's just it's all pretty messed up, to be honest. That's why I preach find a strategy what works for you as an individual. Not what everybody else is saying, So in today's episode, there's been a lot of life lessons. The superpower of letting go. I think that's been a good one for people to hear about. Stop worrying about the future, live in the present, control what you have control over. Be open-minded with nutrition. Find a diet strategy what works for you. Sandy, he's found keto certainly works for him. If anybody wants some advice or tips or whatever it may be in terms of keto, Sandy's definitely open for that. Yeah. And resilient journey. Just as always, never give up. Just any advice just to finish with, Sandy?
Listen to yourself. You'll know, whatever journey you start on, you'll know whether it's working. You'll know how you feel, and what works for one doesn't work for everybody. And just open your mind. Don't go to any one. So if you're looking for inspiration, if you're looking for knowledge, don't go just to any one place, any one website, because there is a massive amount of information, out there to sift through. For me, I personally like listening to people that have got no affiliation to government, no affiliation to dietary, sort of recommendations from, sort of the NHS or any other, body around the world that are totally independent. They do their own research, like Tim Noakes. Gary Taubes in America is another one. They do their own thing. And if I can give any advice, that'd be it. Don't be blinkered. Open your mind to to absolutely everything.
Absolutely. Right. I think that's been about an hour of our time, Sandy. So I appreciate you joining us. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Where can they find you, Sandy, if they need to get in touch?
Do you want to take my details afterwards and put it in a link below the? I haven't got a problem with that, either on mobile or email. And as I said, I'm not trying to be cagey, at all. Anybody can get in touch with me, and I'll give you any information that you need, with regard what's worked for me. It's not a selling point, at all. It's just what's worked for me, and I'll answer anybody's questions. And if I don't know the answer, I always know a man who does.
Yeah. Right, guys, this has been Sandy Sanderson's Resilient Journey. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next one.
Lovely. Thank you very much.